Good evening. Thank you for coming to this crime and disorder committee. This is panel 4. Today, this is a hybrid meeting where we have two community representatives joining us on Zoom. That's Admon Azuku, the Chief Executive from West London Equality Centre, and Bishop Lloyd Crossfield from Chair of Community Monitoring Group. So two from I don't know if anyone else is joining us virtually.
Councillor Kwanzaa is
and I understand Councillor Kwanzaa as well is joining us, not just virtually. Yes, speaking at this meeting, it's through the chair, and if we have members joining virtually cannot vote in, if should there be any voting in this, but that's it. Now we can get on to the agenda. Any apologies?
no
Sorry.
apologies, Chair.
Any urgent matters? No. Matters to be considered in private. Declaration of interest.
Sorry. It's just the same one I gave at the very first meeting, but I've been advised that I should tell you about it again, but I'm not going to repeat all the things I said in the first meeting because we'll be here for half an hour. Thank you.
Thank you. That's already been noted. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting. We have not done the minutes for this one yet, and so what we're going to do is on a police engagement local community. The panel will be hearing from community representatives. What we will do, we will hear from Mariam Tarabi first, and then from Paula Howe, and after that from Bishop Lloyd Crossfield. And you have 10 minutes to do your presentations and 10 minutes to for questions and answers. Oh. Yeah, Abby, you can start yours first. So thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you all for having me here today. For those who don't know me, hi, my name is Mariam Tarabi. I'm a 20-year-old Somali girl that's born and raised in London, Northolt to be precise. I'm the youngest of 10 and I'm very ambitious in making a change within my community. I spent most of my childhood years quite differently to majority of teenagers today, which is why I believe I'm here today. I understand that the police force has come up with a new Met plan in hopes of gaining back community trust. And reading a little bit more, I realized that you guys want to follow out more cases and gaining justice to those who deserve it. However, I believe if you shattered a glass vase in the past, it can't really be put back to how it was. I'm here representing the community of Northolt due to my brother in the past has been murdered in 2017. I released a podcast this summer, and I got reached out to by Ealing Council members and has invited me to present today. It is quite of a sensitive topic, so I believe if you all should be patient with me. Let me finish and ask me questions. Thank you. If you read through the slides, it's got pictures of my brother that's passed away. And I'm now here to tell you guys I've outlived him. I'm 20. He passed away when he was 19 due to being murdered due to knife crime. This knife crime case has honestly shook the whole of London. The reason why I'm so passionate about this topic today is because I don't feel like we was helped due to the police. The case got NFA. The men got let out scot-free. It's one of the biggest knife crimes due to drill songs being made. Everyone has heard his name, and there was no justice at all. I was born and raised in London, in Northolt, the school that my brother has went to, and I got excluded 6 months after a tragic. Sorry, guys. Okay. I believe that case in 2017 was the peak because before that, knife crime wasn't as big growing up. After 2017, it just became a domino effect. Everyone was being killed and stabbed in Norfolk, London, etc. Cases after me was Jason, if you guys have heard. Again, no justice. I'm very in contact with his mum. I believe that the police Met Plan and the community itself and Northolt schools and as a whole, we should all work together. What has happened to me, getting excluded in year 10, would lead to a young teenager getting no GCSEs, but especially with their life being in danger due to the knife crime at being its peak. I've had death threats. I wasn't able to just go to another school and just be a normal teenager, but I still chose to fight back. I got accepted in Parkside Studio College. I came out with GCSEs. I'm here today fighting for a change. But I can't promise that if this happens to any other teenager that they will be so ambitious in making a change within their community. And I believe it starts from the police, the councils, the schools, the bereavement services and NHS, just a lot to all work together to not have a repeat of my story again. And I'd make a promise due to my future to keep fighting for a change, to not let the same things happen to young teenagers again, especially from my area. I'm one person, I can't make a big difference, but making my podcast has got you guys' attention today, which I don't have any regret of that. And I believe that it's not easy to speak my truth growing up. It's easier to just let the past go and just close all doors. But I believe that London has a lot to work on in terms of youth and how we can help them, and just start by the youth because we can create a better change. Again, this has happened to me in 13 years old. I'm now 20 and I could have been on the roads doing something completely different, but I'm here today fighting for a change. So let's just support more youth, and that's why I'm here today, to represent my community. And I think it should start with the police force in itself, domino effect to the police, to the schools, to the NHS, and everyone working as a whole, and we can build a brighter London. That's all from me.
Thank you. Really sorry for what happened to you. I would open this to questions. Any panel member wish to ask? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly we have to commend your bravery, Mariam, in terms of what you've done yourself in speaking about what's happened to you and your family. It's obviously a tremendously traumatic experience for you, and making the podcast, which I've listened to in preparation for this evening's meeting, and coming here this evening and sharing again what's happened to you, because I know it's not just something that is historical. You will relive that every day. And having grown up in Ealing and had people who went to that school who are very close to me, and knowing the situation, I think what you've said in terms of
Excluding, yeah,
making a brighter future for people is very important. But you've also touched on something that is also very important for our young people. People can be affected by anything, whether it's crime, whether it's racism, whether it's discrimination. People can be excluded from our services far too easily. I know that there are other panels that will deal with that, Chair, but I think it is very important that we place that on the record. What I'd like to ask you is what steps you think councils can take, or what steps we can take in terms of improving the experience for yourself, for your community, for people of colour, and for victims of crime, because the police will have an answer in respect of your case that will
Yes.
never be satisfactory
Yeah.
for you. And we have to be very, very honest about that. They will admit their failings or otherwise in terms of that particular case. But we want to put in place learnings as to how all of us can react to these situations with compassion and intelligence to make sure that no one's educational experience or life chances are diminished as a result. So could you tell us a little bit about your own experience, what could have been better,
Yes.
and what you want us to do? Thank you.
I have no high expectations for anyone or anything due to I know that I've made a promise to myself to always strive for a better future for myself. Any help I get is a bonus, but I'm always going to get there eventually. But firstly, I want to say that I grew up in a tight-knit community and it just shattered after that death because the school that was meant to console me has now excluded me. And then the house that I was in, council, has now, we had to leave due to fighting for our lives. We was under threat. Since 2017, we've never bounced back housingly. I was 13, growing up with all my siblings in one home, left to being in a bed and breakfast or a hostel, I can't really remember. Then until today, I still don't have that comfort. Okay, and then I was hospitalized for 2 weeks at 14 years old due to, I didn't know why I was sick. I just had stomach pain. I was throwing up. They all said you're fine medically, but it came down to anxiety. So I was so anxious that I had to be in hospital for 2 weeks, but my school didn't pick up. I didn't know. I've never felt that stress in my life. My family doesn't know much things, but if we had bereavement, counseling support through NHS or maybe through schools or GPs, I don't know, we would have been more educated on that situation. Same thing happened to my mum. She got hospitalized as well. We all found out then, oh, it's just people that are grieving. If we had more support from the council, or I don't know where this support comes from. It could be, I know the housing comes from council, but I know schools and NHS also has something to do with it, but that would have made a big difference to us. Until today, like education, I just chose not to go to university. Business is my route. I will want to open up my own restaurant. That's just my route. But having such a tragedy happen to you at 13, studying for a long period of time is just not for me. It can affect a teenager in different ways. But for me, I realized going to schools and everyone knowing your name and everything that happened to you as a tragedy in London, everyone knew who my brother was, and there was drill songs released, as it says in the podcast, and it led me into being such an angry kid because everyone's talking about my situation. If that was put away to rest by the police to not have such violent drill songs out there, then maybe that would have made a difference. So then I realized if everyone came to my help at a time where the school was helping me, the housing has placed us back. It's been over 5 years. I still don't have the same house that we moved out of 2017 in a council house. We're still fending for ourselves, which is okay, but it's not okay at the same time. I came from a community and this is such a big knife crime that everyone knows about, but still offered no help. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I was in the room today, I'm sorry I'm online. I'm just feeling your pain and I'm saying sorry as a human being. I'm so sorry. And I know it sounds like you have had and are having multiple jeopardies: health, education, the police. I'm hearing your pain. So I'm reaching out to you. Sorry, it's digital. It sounds to me like you do need a lot of support still. We need to listen to you. I'm not sure how, but somehow we need to get you that support. This isn't the forum, but there has to be some support for you. And to some extent, what Councillor Crawford has asked, I'm also reinforcing that to ask you what we can do to help. I mean, listening is a starting point, but I need to go back and listen to the podcast so I educate myself. But I what you say and have said touches me and resonates with me because I've also gone through a tragedy which became public. So I cry with you for a reason, but I'm also here to support you, okay? And whatever happens, we will do our best to ensure that from this day on, you are listened to, okay? Mashallah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Can I just ask one question in reference to the school? Why were you excluded and why did they not understand that you had this problem? Normally the school should take some responsibility for guiding kids through this process and not just excluding.
I feel like they just wanted to get rid of, now I'm older, I look back and I'm like, I was in that school and everyone was talking about my brother. It was just causing chaos, and not just for me, but the situation. And they just took me out because they don't want to hear it anymore. Just so, like, I came the most quiet kid in year 7 to a most popular. Everyone got to know me. Everyone wanted to know, like, the stabbing happened in the same area. He also went to that same school. So, and then the drill songs came out, and that, I'm very honest with my story. I became very angry because the drill songs are very vulgar and they're saying things like, I quote, I splashed he whiz and I don't feel sorry for his mum. And then the school divided into two. Someone that's like people that are on my side, and then people that are like saying, oh, I feel sorry for her and you shouldn't be saying these lyrics. And then people are saying it's a good thing. And obviously the people are saying it's a good thing and he deserved it and whatever, I would attack them. That's the truth. But I believe that now I would have treated myself as a teacher with more kindness. Understand that anger is a secondary emotion. I study psychology. There's probably something crying out for help under that. And especially for them coming to the funeral as well, and Abdullahi also going to that school, maybe just move me or give me more therapy. They never put me in therapy. They never did anything. So they just excluded me and put me in internal and more punishment routes. They're more helping the child routes.
So,
oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Yes, please. Any questions? It's through the chair, please. Yeah, and now we have Councillor Anand next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Miriam, it's a very sad story. I'm a councillor for Ealing Common, and hearing your story, I must say to you, before I was a councillor, I didn't know how much the councillors can help in social situations. So when you've actually said, really painful to hear your story. It's a tragic death for somebody who could have had so much, and there's so many consequences that have happened since. But what I've learned since being a councillor is that councillors, if you want you to pass this message on, that councillors can really help. Okay, so when somebody's in problems and don't know who to reach out to, pass this message on that your local councillor is the first point of contact. He has or she has a wide network of people that they can approach. So just please bear that in mind, and it's a really sad story. And I speak after Councillor Crawford and Councillor that we're all with you, and every councillor and every person working in the council right now sees your pain. Okay, so we are all with you, and whenever you need anything, and this is really a reiterate, pass this message on that your local councillor can help. When there is no other help, your local councillor is the right person you can approach. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Sorry.
Chair, I've got probably about 100 questions, but I'll try to boil it down to about 3. I work as a journalist now, so I cover like gang murder crimes all the time. In fact, I was at one on Monday or Tuesday where a young guy was given his second life sentence for 2 murders, both of them committed before he was 18 years old. And the victim's family, he was also 18. Victim's family was giving, horrible, like yourselves, the damage, there's so many ripple effects. Like the dad in that case was a London bus driver who said he had to give up his job because, he was so sort of traumatized, by it. But my 3 questions firstly about knives. We hear a lot about knife crime, and we've obviously Idris Elba has done this campaign recently, and there's a lot of people saying that kids carry knives or young people carry knives to protect themselves, etc. Again, I covered a case last year where a guy was eventually convicted of murder, but he had 4 convictions for possessing a knife, possessing a bladed article. That started when he was 13, and only on the 4th offence he was actually sent to jail. He was given 6 months in jail for the 4th offence. And then after that he came out and stabbed somebody to death. So you think, it really doesn't seem to be much of a deterrent. So on the one hand, I think, I'm thinking, mandatory 3 or 5 year sentences for carrying a knife. But then on the other hand, I know there are cases where people are carrying it for self-defense and they are completely uninvolved with anything. And in other cases, I think there's older kids sort of make younger kids carry knives to sort of get around the law. So I'll be interested to know what you think about that. Secondly, gangs. Obviously in Northolt, we've got the N gang, which which was, I think it's part of the sort of 156, which is the sort of goes on postcodes. One being Southall, Northolt, and Greenford. And in that, you mentioned also drill. On the question of gangs, do you think people like your brother or people, the people who killed him, do you think they consider, they are members of a gang, or do you think they're just, we're friends and, these are other people and we've got a grudge against them? Or do you actually think, I'm a member of so-and-so gang and, if you were to ban them, like banning being the IRA or something, it would make any difference? And lastly, on drill music, you mentioned drill music as being quite a, sort of a bit of a petrol that goes on the fire that makes things worse. There's so many videos on YouTube which are, I just can't believe that they are still up there, because they are, they're just stoking the fire. And in particular, I think after your brother was killed, there was a murder a few years later, sort of in revenge, by I think Tamba Mamadou, who had been acquitted. Well, I think you said no NFA had been sort of allowed to go free. He was then murdered, and there was then a video came out, and I think it was filmed on the Islip Manor estate in my ward, and in there the N gang were basically holding up a skeleton of pretending to be the dead guy and sort of mocking him. And that is still up there on YouTube today. Do you think YouTube and other response?
Please, question, please. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I've got a lot to go on there.
It's okay. If you start from the last question, when my brother passed away, it didn't just hurt my family, it hurt the whole community. I said Manor, Engang, if you want to call it. I feel like when T Rose passed away with Tamba Mamadou, the murderer of my brother, am I here to lie to you all today? I felt relief because I was working to become a lawyer so I can reopen the case. And I was just so delusional to see what I can do to get myself some revenge, because we all know it's him. He's on social media. He's like, I got away with murder. Like, what you guys like, he really stunned on it. So when he did pass away, I felt a sense of relief. Like, I don't have to become a lawyer anymore. I can actually just be who I want to be and just follow my passion. It's not like a revenge for me to go out. And that, for me, if I was a boy or a male with that revenge in me, I probably would have went and done something violent with it. But I'm a female. I had to play my cards right and see what I can do. Maybe it's education to get, but the revenge is still there. That anger in me is still built in there. Which is why I believe that therapy is so important. Because then going on to your second question with all these, always at your first one, which is knife carrying. I believe that people, so for example, with my brother's case, if he went to the corner shop and carried a knife that day, maybe he would have had a chance to live, you know? But he didn't, and okay, it's what had happened. But again, we received nothing from it. No one got locked up. He still passed away, you know? So people like it's the same situation on the street. So people are like, I have to carry it. If it's not me, if it's not them, it's me. So it's and again, that goes back down to therapy, because maybe they have situations in the past where their relative passed away and it's just passed down beef. So my brother, whoever killed him, it's not a personal war to him. It's just probably someone who didn't like his friend or so. It's just passed down beef. And if you really tackle that and break it where it's coming from, is therapy. These kids are scared. They're just scared. And they're like, I have to protect myself. And if the police are not going to protect me, no one's going to protect me, it's this knife. And if we go and help them through a therapy route, and I really believe in that, or I don't know, whatever other exercises we can do for these kids, then maybe they wouldn't be so scared to carry a knife. And in terms of that drill song with the Norfolk posting it, I don't agree that, even though I feel a relief to that, and that's what's happened to us for the past 4 years, 5 years since Tamba died, we genuinely couldn't say anything, because what do you want us to say to no one's dead? Like, no, we got no justice, there's nothing there. So when it's happened, it's more of a, you guys have been doing this in our faces, here we go. But I still don't agree. These men are damaged, they're just broken kids inside and they just need help. It's like this is what you guys have been doing in the past and now we can do it to you guys. But no one's really, they're just unhappy. And if you really look past it and try look into the situation, they've been taking it for the past 5 years. It's all over social media. I don't even need to speak for them. It's on social media. So I don't applaud how their reaction was, but I understand it. Let's just say that. And I feel like I've missed something out in terms of the gangs. I feel like people from Northolt, where I'm representing, I don't believe that they're a gang. I feel like we just grew up together. Because if I have something to prove in that way. For example, my brother, he knew people that's not part of Norfolk Greenford. But he knew people he knew people from Rayners Lane, which is the area that killed him. I have people messaging me today that are friends with him from Rayners Lane. So my brother's a big character. It's not just he wasn't secluded just to Norfolk. No, he's a big character. Yes, he was chilling in Norfolk. He grew up in Norfolk. That's his community. But he also now, since his passing, Norfolk Greenford has also fell apart. He was the heart of that. He would put everyone together. Now, not everyone's so close and tight-knit no more, you know? So I don't believe, as the community that I'm representing, I don't believe they're solely just a gang. They're just a big family that's also got, they're not all innocent, but hey, I don't know. That's all I can say.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Councillor Kumar. And this is going to be the last question. After that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Mariam. I'm Councillor Seema Kumar, and I represent Healing Broadway Ward. And I worked with children's charities, and that's, my other. So I know how you're feeling, and my thoughts are with you. And I know my colleagues have said that, councillors are there to help, as is the police and our safer communities in the council. We constantly, dealing with things. We are human beings and you can learn from mistakes. So, feel free to share your thoughts. And that brings me straight on to my question, that you've said that you wanted to say much more on how the police could help the community. Your story ties into helping the police do better for the community. Would you like to share some of your thoughts?
I believe they should look into cases more. They shouldn't be biased in terms of the color of the people. I believe that plays a big part because we're Black. It's a Black on Black knife case. It would be big. It would be a difference if it was a white on a Black knife case or a white on a white knife case. So that's my feelings, and I believe that they should offer safety. I had to leave my home due to safety, and the funeral people were coming due to safety. They were throwing bottles at the funeral, and then I was getting death threats, and I don't know who to turn to. And I believe that the police could have really made us feel safer, maybe put us in a safer situation. I don't know, because I did actually, when I was younger, call them and ask them to take down the drill songs. If they took action then, even the Norfolk I Sit Manor song would not been here now. I just believe in terms of life-threatening situations and fear and things like that, is common sense to turn to the police, but I couldn't with my story because I felt very let down. That's all. Just maybe put some security and safety in place, because growing up, when you're in danger, who do you call? You do call the police. I was in danger all my life. I didn't feel like I could call the police. It only calmed down when it hit 5-year marker. I felt safe the past 2 years, but it was a lot.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have made some notes now. Yeah, I'm conscious of time. Yeah, so can we now ask Paula House to show a presentation?
Hi, I'm Paula Howell. I work with the West London Equality Centre. We've been assisting victims of hate crime since 2018. But this presentation is really just to provide a brief background of hate crimes generally, some of the figures, statistics, and we're particularly concerned about ASB hate crimes because we find that they're not really being picked up as they should. But more recently, we've been in conversation with Ealing Council, the police, and we're working towards solving some of these. But in the meantime, let me go through some of what the slides. The next one. Oh. Okay. Yes. Oh, you've missed it. Have you gone on? That was it. I mean, this is just this year, 2023, they recorded a fall in hate crimes in total. So we had 145, 145,000. We believe this probably will change in the coming year due to issues in Gaza and also possibly politicization of refugees crisis, etc. So that's just giving you a sense of the size of hate crimes generally in the UK. Hate crime statistics are devised by strand. So you have 5 particular protected characteristics that go into prosecuting hate crime. So the first one is racially motivated hate crime, sexual orientation, disability, religion, transgender. Those are the 5 characteristics. And as you can see, racially motivated hate crimes are always at the top. They're over 70%. And it's consistently so all the way through. Last year, we had a slight higher racial hate crime. That was 109,000, so it's gone down 8,000 or so. Okay, let's go to, well, this is quite interesting, why victims of hate crime are entitled to protection. The European Convention on Human Rights requires states to protect their citizens from hate crimes on the basis that everyone has a right to not to be subjected to A, degrading treatment, and B, those rights should not be affected by discrimination. What that then puts is on the state to ensure that they protect victims of hate crime. And that's why we have hate crime laws. And in theory, if we do have an issue where the police or whoever, council, is not performing, and somebody is harmed in some way and they're not getting any redress, potentially you could have a human rights claim against the relevant authority. Okay, you probably all know the definition of hate crime, but what I'm really looking at here is just to remind you of certain things. First of all, perception of the perpetrator is important. So if somebody commits a hate crime on the basis they believe that this person belongs to a particular strand characteristic, it doesn't matter. They will still be convicted if found guilty of hate crime. The perception of the victim is also important. And the Law Commission has done some research on this recently, and there's a sense that this shouldn't really be the case. But it doesn't really matter, because if an incident is taken, somebody's taken to court, or a perpetrator is taken to court, the victim's perception doesn't play a part. It's still to do with the law generally. But what it does is possibly allows victims to bring something to the attention of the police if they feel they've been exposed to hate crime. Even if it's not, it doesn't matter, but at least they have that opportunity. Okay, at the Westland Equality Centre, we have the majority of our cases now are with reference to ASB incidents and hate crime in ASB settings. We get referrals now. We're basically a referral agency now. We get referrals from CATCH, which is the Community Alliance to Combat Hate. CATCH is an organization, I don't know if you all know, but they are supported by the Mayor's Office of Police and Crime to provide a service or services to victims of hate crime. And they involve various organizations who are like Spectre, Gallup, etc. And they assist groups who fall within their particular remit. And we've got a lot of referrals from them, but again, they've been mainly ASB, because these cases are very difficult to resolve, and it involves police, council, and sometimes social housing. So it is quite difficult. We've got, as I said, about 37% of our cases come from Ealing. The rest is outside of London. Okay. Right. ASB, yeah. We've looked at some research. We've had to just to see what is the sort of where ASB sits generally. And we looked at research recently, which was from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman report. And that's quite interesting. They're saying residents across England impacted by ASB are often not responded to or supported by their council. Additionally, councils are not using the existing powers and tools they have to tackle ASB. And the problem is with ASB it's a difficult area, because the legislation is the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act. It's a very difficult area to navigate. It depends on the cooperation of the police, local councils, housing associations, or social housing providers. And this is where we sometimes don't get the cooperation that's necessary. And obviously identifying hate crimes in those areas is quite difficult, because they're neighbors possibly having a quarrel, and the perception generally is it's just somebody having a tiff. But it doesn't matter, because even though you may quarrel about a fence, but then you start abusing your neighbor because of their particularly protected characteristics, whether they're gay, black, white, whatever, then you stray into the area of hate crime. And that would be seen as harassment. And harassment is a criminal offense. So in theory, you can do something about that. And interestingly, Home Office commissioned a report by Ipsos looking at the impact of ASB on victims in the wider community. And they discovered that, in effect, people living in deprived areas tend not to report hate crime as much. And this was purely about an ASB report. So they're looking at the impact of ASB on communities and how they could how they responded to hate crime generally, or ASB generally, and what was happening in that setting. But in that report, they actually had the majority of respondents were white, something like 88%, but they did have a small finding of other minorities. So that was their conclusion. And that tends to make us try to understand in essence why minorities don't report anyway. There's a tendency for minorities not to report hate crime. So in this setting, they're less likely because the feeling is that they may not be supported. More statistic we have about 1 million incidents of ASB in 2003. This is coming from the Crime Survey of England and Wales, very respected. According to the crime rate, December 2022 and November 2023, there were 10,800 or so incidents of ASB recorded in Ealing. And Ealing, from Ealing data, seems to have the highest percentage by comparison to other comparison to England and London. So they seem to have a problem with ASB. The next one. Okay. Right. Yeah, what we found generally when we have been looking at ASB cases and having to deal with them, the casework is quite heavy. It's very difficult because we're writing to police, we're writing to the council, we have to get a sense of what's going on, what exactly has happened. So they take a long time to get movement on. But what we're seeing is, and I think that's recognized, is that most ASB cases are seen as low-level crimes. And once you start from that position, then what you're saying is really everything is low-level. And then, and the ASB, even down to the legislation itself, there is a sense that somehow there are processes of dealing with ASB in neighbor settings, which is purely to do with trying to solve those problems as opposed to identifying hate crimes. And from our experience, most of the victims don't actually understand, don't know that they have had a hate crime, but sometimes it's picked up by one of the other services they've gone to, which is usually Gallup or whatever, or they've self-referred to us. And we've been able to pick some of these up and then try to run with it, but they're very difficult to resolve. Another issue is how victims how they process these incidents. Often when someone reports an ASB and they may even allege hate crimes, the normal approach by the police and even the council is for them to provide evidence, which is quite difficult because they're not in the business of providing evidence. They don't know really what to do. They're told to get recordings, etc. Of course, they're afraid to do that because it might be that they will rile up the perpetrator. But what's even worse in some ways is that the perpetrator is usually contacted by the police beforehand. So what happens there is the perpetrator decides, okay, they're onto me, let's try and be clever about this. So the harassment continues, but in a more subtle way, and making it more difficult for the victims to be able to identify what's going on, or prove, because they just haven't got their wherewithal. So our sense is perhaps the police shouldn't be using that sort of approach, but you have another approach, which is trying to get more information without first going to the perpetrator. And we found obvious that there's also kind of a lack of knowledge in the process of ASB. So for instance, we've had cases where council has told someone, oh, because you're a private tenant, we can't help you because we don't deal with those cases. So, you know, there is quite there are a lot of issues trying to overcome for victims, because they get every turn they have some sort of issue, whether it's providing evidence, whether it's being accepted, and something, for instance, like the community trigger, which is part of the process, which is accepted by government, that this should be done at as early as possible. But it doesn't happen. It goes on, and you know, I've got cases where 15 years later, somebody's come to us and they've not had a trigger. So clearly and there is a criticism of this in the research we've looked at as well. It's not just for us to say. And yeah, okay, but we have some rather better news, is that we are now in discussions with Ealing Council in reference to the setting up the hate crime operational group, which should be embedded in the council, and that will allow the police, council, and other organizations to work together in order to provide some sort of better support for victims. And the intention is to develop some sort of strategies to reduce hate crime through education, community support, and so on. I think part of that will be the involvement of civil society, which I think a lot of councils have not done, is that they try to keep it within councils, within the police structure, or whatever. But I think we've come across a lot of organizations who do assist victims. And I think having a group who are part of that will give them with some tools on how to assist and how to pass information to the various bodies and try to reduce some of the hate crime and recognize hate crime through education. And I think what we've noticed as well is that with ASB cases in particular, there are a lot of hate crimes occurring in that setting, which are not usually recognized. And I think by targeting those areas, we're targeting communities who will then have sufficient knowledge about hate crimes to take it elsewhere. So it's kind of hidden within ASB. If we can open that up and give people a sense of a better understanding through education, otherwise, and communication with local communities, we should be able to also educate people generally in reference to hate crimes and how best to report and what they can expect to get from reporting a hate crime. And obviously, partners would be involved in that as well. And I think that's that for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to open questions. For questions, please keep the questions relevant to the topic. And Mariam, if you wish to go, you can. You're welcome to stay to the end if you want to. It's up to you. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Thank you, Chair. And Chair, just with your indulgence, I just wanted to say on Mariam's account and everything that was shared, and just want to thank her and her family for being here and such immense bravery and taking so much pain and doing something quite so incredible with it. You've inspired us, and you're in the right room. This panel is a new panel. We set it up because we want to build better bridges in our community, how we do things, working with the local police team, local council, and the community. But thank you so much. You've given us so much food for thought this evening. And I just had a question, Chair. It was just actually on the last slide. Was it the hate crime operational group? Yes. Which sounds like a really good idea. And again, I think we have a mini version of it here in the room. It's got all the components of local police, local council, and community. Is that taken from like a model that exists in other boroughs? Is it something that we know has kind of worked before? I hadn't heard of it before, but I think it's a really wonderful initiative and really looking forward to it getting started. Was just curious, are other boroughs doing it differently? Were we inspired from somewhere else, or is it something we came up with?
Some boroughs have, that I've just discovered now, are doing similar thing, but they're very few. This has come from a long association with Ealing and trying to resolve these issues. So I think it's an amazing step forward, and it's kind of built on the same principle as Vogue, though it may not be quite the same structure, but it was certainly built on that. And I think it's, with hate crime, because it's so difficult to understand and there's so little education on it, we really need to have a group that can provide the assistance and can also educate, because all of us together can do that work better than simply leaving it to police, council, or civil society. I think have a great role to play. Good role to play. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. But I'm really glad that we've had the opportunity to have this particular presentation, because antisocial behaviour and hate crime is something that has come across my radar massively since I came onto the council, and I couldn't agree more that two things that are highlighted in the presentation. Firstly, it may be for resource reasons, it may be for prioritization reasons, but oftentimes these types of issues are considered low-level crime. The onus is on the victims to report, to gather the evidence, and to come back to the authorities with providing more evidence. Many times when that's going to put individuals in danger or discourage them from presenting evidence, particularly against their neighbours or people who are prominent within their communities. And the other thing that Paula will know, but it hasn't made explicit in this presentation, is that it may start as low-level crime. It can very easily and oftentimes escalate to something far more serious than that, presents a present danger to people within their communities. And I struggle with how we rationalise this and work forward with it, because the problem is that the legislation is clearly insufficient for tackling these issues in the way that we would like to. So look, I'd love to hear more about the progress towards the hate crime operational group, and indeed from representatives of the council and the police in the room in due course. But I think we almost have to look at how we as a local authority, as one of the most diverse local authorities in London, really has a duty to make this more prominent, whether that be within our ward panels, our policing ward panels, whether that be in terms of the response of the Metropolitan Police, because what it comes down to is trust, fundamentally trust between the community and the different agencies. And I'll just finish by saying a lot of and Mariam has left us now, but my first instance of this came from reporting from the Acton Somali Association about some of the instances that people within their community were putting up with on a day-to-day basis. And it's a very similar case to Mariam's, where a family had to leave their place of residence, their place of sanctuary, to go somewhere else because somebody was making it more difficult for them to live a daily life. So I think there are more systemic problems than merely what is happening here. But I think we also have a duty to prioritize this more in terms of how we address these issues.
I think with hate crimes, I think what happens also is that victims are not necessarily supported by neighbours, because the feeling is that neighbours don't want to get involved. They don't want to be in case they become targeted. So that evidence is lost as well, because they will not give a statement to the police, they will not talk to the council, and that's our experience, because they don't want to be fingered about. So that makes it twice as bad in any way. And of course, you're living with this thing for years and years, and the mental health of the victim, as we have, many of them are suffering from severe mental health issues. And they sometimes they have an opportunity to be moved, but a lot of times they're there for years. As I said, the longest I've had now is somebody not in Ealing who's been been putting up with this behavior for 15 years. And they came to us recently.
Thank you. Absolutely accept all those points, and I think they're very well made, and appreciate Paula's insights tonight as well. And I think the kind of work we're trying to pull together around a partnership is important. There was previously, going back a number of years, a much more rich and much more well occupied voluntary space around the various different groups and communities that are prevalent around hate crime. And, through different things, austerity and other aspects, particularly COVID as well, meant that a lot of the community resource in that space has definitely kind of stepped and ceded away a little bit. So there's definitely more of a challenge about engaging with community groups and people in the community who are leading this space. But I think where this connects well into the conversation we're having about a new Met for London, without going into the detail about ASB and hate crime, because there's lots in that, it's high volume. And whilst we would love to be able to action all instances, that the evidential threshold and how we get around that is a real challenge for both the council and the police. But where this connects back to, I suppose, for me anyway, is hate crime is a confidence issue. People will report their house getting burgled or their car being stolen or their phone being stolen. Reporting hate crime to the police or the council is confidence related. If you don't think there's a value in reporting, or you're not confident in the group you're reporting to, then my feeling is people will be less inclined to report. So I think hate crime in the context of trust and confidence is a real kind of canary in that coal mine of how confident are people that reporting something will have an outcome. And some of the messages that we often take back to the community is report everything, because you mightn't solve something with one report, but you create an evidential trail that eventually allows us to do an intervention. You know, you don't always intervene on one report, but where you can demonstrate that low level, the start, where the first instances of that disagreement or whatever it is that lead to more serious incidents, us being able to demonstrate that certainly makes it much more easy for us to get an intervention, whether that's a civil intervention or a criminal one. So I think it is very connected to trust and confidence, this issue. And I think it's really helpful to have the conversation and the points you've made. I think are absolutely valid. So I just wanted to add that in that perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Lori. Councillor Kumar's question, and then followed by Councillor Kwak.
Okay, well, thank you, Paula. I see that a lot of progress has been made since we started this conversation, and I'm sure that improvements will continue. Chair, I do sit, I'm one of the councillors who sits on the West London Equality Centre, and I had done work with the hate, with my Ealing MenCap and the hate crime, got them funding from OPEC, etc. So my interest was there because I actually listened to the people. So what are your thoughts? I mean, what is your, say, recommendation further in very briefly that comes to mind? I know the challenges that reporting and all that, we're well aware of that, but what do you think is the immediate well, I would say a point that we could take on board?
I mean, I'd like to see a change in the law to some extent, to a degree, especially the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act. There are various methods there. You have use of injunctions, etc., to stop behavior. But when you have a hate crime, you don't want to stop the behavior. You want to just make sure that person recognizes that they've committed a criminal offense. So that's where we are falling short. And I do believe sometimes the police find it very difficult to get the evidence on hate crime. But my sense is that it needs to be, police and others need to have a more creative attitude to hate crime, and how best, and looking at how do you find the evidence? What do you need to show, especially in the ASB setting where it's very fuzzy. Sometimes it just looks like an argument. And but I think law is important, and certainly when you come to the Human Rights Act, if people are feeling that they're not supported, potentially you have a human rights claim that you could, and maybe highlight those sort of issues that may eventually result in a change in the law. But it is a very difficult area, but I think it needs, especially in ASB setting, for the groups to get to the parties, because we have the council, the police, and housing associations, social service, social housing providers. And the problem is that they're not working together. And when questioning is being done, I'm not sure the questioning of the victim is done in a way to get the right evidence. And I've spoken to someone else about this recently who's been involved in council situation. And they're saying that that's what they found, is that they never thought that when they interview someone who's been exposed to ASB, or there's possibly a complaining of a hate crime, they've not actually asked the right questions. So all that perhaps we would get through the HCOG, because we would be able to look at other ways of making sure we are more effective, or the borough is more effective in dealing with hate crimes.
You know that you've now got a hate crime specific officer, say 1.5 officer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, has that helped?
Yes, but we're not, it hasn't really, because we have referred things to police, but I think they're just completely taken up with other things. And it's one individual, and we can go through all the, the CAD numbers, what has happened, but to try and get that hate crime confirmed is very difficult, because you need to revisit the whole thing probably. And to be honest, if it's seen as a low level, which I quite understand, you have hate, you have knife crime, you have serious crimes all over the place. Police do prioritize, and I can understand that. But that's why it's necessary to have a more creative approach in the questioning, in trying to get the right answers when you get somebody's telling you that they've been exposed to hate crime in this setting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Admin Ajak, you got.
Thank you very much for recognizing me. I just want to add quickly that I work with Paula, and we are colleagues from the West London Equality Centre. And in terms of the presentation that Paula made, antisocial behavior within the background of hate crime, and also what we heard from Miriam earlier in the presentation. We understand that the core principle of policing is tackling a crime, but the character of crime and the varies from community to communities and across different areas of London. In our area of London here, there's a high immigrant population. There are very high indices of minority groups. And essentially, some of these may not have, from the background they're coming from, they may not have that very strong view of the police as a friend. There are issues of trust and confidence already there. And where they then suffer hate crime or they are victims of crime, there's that initial reticence to approach the police there. But when is then added to the view that they would not be taken seriously, or that the responsibility to prove their case would lie on them, then that creates an added barrier where they then want to come forward. And it just adds to the problem, because there's lower detection rate, there's lower deterrence, and it just would increase the perpetrator's confidence, because there's no sanction for their actions. And so we believe that people within the communities know a lot. They see a lot. If that trust and confidence to be able to approach the police is there, and the new turnaround plan for the police in terms of more trust, less crime, high standard, would possibly be enhanced when people have that confidence that the police will listen, and that there is likely to be a higher deterrence and detection rate when they report crime.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Question from Councillor Kwanzaa.
Thank you, Chair. Many of the points have been said already, but I'm very interested, Paula, thank you for your presentation. In the statistics 2021-22, why Ealing seems to have a problem. Has there been any attempt to address the underlying cause as to why Ealing has stood out? It's good to know there's a strategy happening right now, and whether we have strong policies that are linking hate crime and ASBOs together. I also feel like as somebody, as a child, believe it or not, I was actually beaten up by 2 white children whose parents were in the police force. And I'm living with the physical legacies of that hate crime. way back in the day. Trust is very important. We need to see leadership from people who look like us, whether we're black, wearing, hijab, women having different, sexual orientations. And we just need to have people who look like us. And it's great that you get one hate crime officer. It's not enough. They're overworked. We're over. So, I just want to hear some responses to my points, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Which response?
Yes. Thing on. Yeah, I'm not really sure why the figures for ASB are so high in Ealing, but it's possibly to do with the large immigrant population, and those population are living in areas where ASB tends to be more prevalent. I'll come to so we don't, and so we're not absolutely sure, but I will leave it to you now to explain.
Yep, Mr. Murray.
Just on that point, I suppose for me, as one of the most diverse boroughs in Britain, I think that's probably quite an underlying factor in the context of hate crime. Obviously, I think I'm of the view, having worked in Ealing for 19 years, that Ealing is one of the major transport routes in and out of London for the west of the borough, of course, and that's only been increased with the Elizabeth line and others. So often public transport and the areas around public transport see a lot of incidents around hate crime and things like that. So it's also just physically a very large borough. Often you see a lot of hate crime associated with traffic, collisions, all sorts of different scenarios. And that's the unique thing about hate crime. It'll happen in any kind of situation. So that would be my thoughts on how and why, but I'm sure there's lots of different contributing factors to that, I suppose.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. That's the conclusion now. I'm conscious of time now. Yeah. So we have Bishop Lloyd Crossfield now, Chair of Community Monitoring Group, and I believe he's going to speak about stop and search. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invite. Good to be with everyone. I would be there personally, as I said before everybody came on, but I'm out of the country. But glad to be a part of the meeting and hearing all of the things that have been said by Mariam and Paula. So I've been asked to share my views with regards to stop and search, and just a little explanation of myself, who I am. I'm a pastor for the church called Freedom Worship Centre in Southall. We've been in the community for 60 years. Actually, this year is our 60th year celebration, so we've been around a very long time. I'm also the chair for the community monitoring groups for Ealing. And in preparation for this meeting, I was looking at a recent report that was sent to myself or us as the borough chairs from MOPAC, and it was a report on Criminal Justice Alliance, their super complaint. And the report stated, again, I'm conscious of time, so I won't be very long with you, but the report stated that the Criminal Justice Alliance considers the very low arrest rates and seizures of weapons after Section 60 stop and searches show that Section 60 is ineffective in dealing with violent crime. So we have stop and search, we have Section 60s, which put stop and search into action. One of the other things that was said is that it is concerned that it is a discriminatory and traumatizing power, and that the impact of stop and search can be long-lasting and traumatizing, especially when used on children or young adults. And that point in particular is one thing that I want to emphasize to the police with regards to stop and search, because that actually reminds me. I even heard Councillor Kwanzaa mention her own traumatic experience as well. That reminds me of my own traumatic experience at the hands of the police. I'm 56 now. I was 19 years old at the time. Left work, went into a shop, closed shop, looking around, just having a look at any items that I could buy or purchase. I got held up by at least 4 police officers that came in, surrounded me, said that I fit the description of a black guy in a blue suit with a white shirt and red tie, which I just happened to be wearing. The way I was treated, it was embarrassing amongst all the other the shopkeeper themselves that was seeing what was going on, and those who were in the shop as well. It was embarrassing for me. The way that I was treated. It was so bad that when I went home and told my parents, they made a point of going down to the police station and getting this sorted out. So that was my personal experience. And then from the age of 22, approximately, and my wife can attest to this, I used to drive a very nice car at the time. And I was stopped on several occasions. And somebody who grew up in a Christian home, was not involved in gangs or anything like that, because of the way I was treated, how I was treated aggressively by police officers when they stopped me and questioned me, I myself began to react in a way that I shouldn't have in hindsight now, but I began to react because of how I was being treated at the time. So I became aggressive towards them, and spoke to them in ways that I shouldn't. And so, as I said, that report mentions of discriminatory and traumatizing power, and I think that with my involvement now with the community monitoring groups, what I'm trying to get over to the police when I speak to them is that we actually now have a problem with regards to history and what has taken place in history. So, for example, I've told my children, I've got 2 boys, 2 girls, and especially my boys, I've told them my experiences. So what that now does to them, they do not trust the police. They do not trust the police because of the way that I have been treated. And this is what you have within the Black community, that it's trauma that the Black community have experienced over many, many years, multiple years. And so it just so happens then, being involved now with the community monitoring group, I've been a part of that now for a year, just over a year and a half almost. And we actually are able to have meetings with the police, and I'm able to see it from a different perspective now, because we are able to go through and analyze stop and search data. We're able to attend the police station and look at body-worn videos of the police and how they do what they do. I do have questions sometimes about even the body-worn videos and why some police may not activate their video straight away, because the audio doesn't, it takes about a minute for the audio to actually come on. Why is that? In this age of technology, we should be hearing everything from the get-go with those body-worn video cameras. And basically, as the community monitoring group, we are trying our very best to hold the police to account. Now, as I said, we've been up and running for the last year and a half. So to a degree, we are still finding our way. There are 4 of us within the community monitoring group. We're looking for more people to be a part of our group. But we are making headway now, because I've been in major discussion with, firstly, Sean Wilson, and secondly now Sean Lynch, and his team, who are in a position where they're making changes so that we can have meetings. Even if one or two of them are not available, we can still have the meetings that we have diarized for the year. What's happened in the past, earlier on, taking over from taking up this role, is that there are times when the police have, they've been busy and those meetings haven't happened. And I've had to actually go back and complain to make clear that we are not a group that should be looked over. You are accountable, the police are accountable to us, and they need to make sure that the meetings that we have diarized are being fulfilled. Well, Sean is actually doing that with his team now. I can see that there is a relationship. We have a relationship with them. But again, part of my problem, I'll be finishing off here, is it's good for us to talk to those who are at the top, those who know exactly where we are coming from. But the question is, does that get filtered down to those who are on the ground in terms of how they are still doing their stop and serve? Disproportionality amongst the Black community, it's just there. The figures are there. I will continue to go through with the police with regards to the figures. So unfortunately, I don't have particular figures for this meeting. But as I said, we are developing with all of that. So two other questions. I don't know. One question is it just a tick box thing for the Met, new Met for London? We've got to get these meetings in. We've got to make sure we're doing X, Y, Z because that's what's required and we're ticking a box. I think in my own personal experience, it's a bit more than that. There is a relationship that's developing. We need to keep that going. There's also the point of much more, I believe, training and understanding for the police with regards to certain communities that they do not get, they do not understand. And even as Councillor Kwanzaa was saying about people who look like us should be represented even in some of those training rooms so that we can see, okay, well, maybe you should approach this differently. So this is where we are at the moment as a community monitoring group. We have a long way to go. But yes, I'll just leave that there.
Thank you very much. Anyone question? Yeah. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the contributions. It's very interesting to hear from the chairs and people involved in the community monitoring groups. I have to concur with what we've heard. I think I'm trying to think who was on the panel when Councillor Kumar was on a previous panel with me where we talked about stop and search, and I directly spoke to Chief Superintendent Wilson and Superintendent Lynch about the experience of me being a white guy who's grown up in Acton, and it may surprise members of this panel not be a stranger to frequenting entertainment venues and public houses and the like, and coming out and going home, and never having been stopped and searched for anything. Yet my Black colleagues, my Asian colleagues, school friends have all been stopped and searched multiple times. What I would say is I referred 4 of those individuals to the Racial Equality Commission for Ealing, which the police were part of, and all of us indeed were a few years ago. And a couple of those individuals have been involved in some of the activities that the police have subsequently undertaken. And the anecdotal evidence I get concurs with what we've just heard, which is that we are making progress in this area. All I would say about stop and search is part of me thinks it's a failure of policing to even have to do as many stop and searches as we do. I understand that it's still an evidential and investigative tool for the police, but there will be, as we get better, develop better relationships with diverse communities and better intelligence. Hopefully those very intrusive and frankly, fairly blunt investigative measures can give way to more community-based policing, which I know is what the police want to do. I would just like to see a bit more communication over the powers that they're using, because we still police by consent, and that is the major issue that we have at the moment. Not just, I wouldn't even say it's a problem with London's diverse communities. I think it is now a problem across London and across Ealing, regardless of your race or protected characteristics. I think we have a problem with regards to people reporting anything and having confidence that that will then lead to convictions or action. And I am sympathetic to the police because of the resourcing issues that they face and the amount of crime that they have to action. I just plead that we continue down this path. And several times participants in their written testimony and in their oral testimony tonight have spoken about best practice. And I think there's a real opportunity for us here, in conjunction with the council, in conjunction with members of the community who feel passionate about their area being safe, is to look at the best practice, whether that's within London, whether that's further afield. Look at how best we can use stop and search as well as other policing powers and other means of investigation, and utilising some of the tools that Mr. Murray has spoken about. And whether we can bring together a network of agencies to try and tackle some of these things and bring that confidence back, because I know we are making progress. I hear it from my constituents, and I'd like to think that we can continue doing that. So it's not really a question that needs an answer at this point. It's more of a sort of, some of this approach is working, but we need to involve all the people who are currently involved, and perhaps more in the future, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Summers.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to disagree with Councillor Crawford on a lot of that. I hear Bishop Lloyd. I hear what you say about discrimination and your own experience. And my partner is Black, and she has suffered, racial profiling and shop store detectives, things like that. They see you're Black and they sort of assume that you're going to steal something or whatever. So I know that is true, and I totally understand that young Black men rather than sort of older Black men are more likely to get stop and searched. But the big but in this is the statistics. Today, the Office of National Statistics brought out their latest homicide figures, which showed that Black people, but I think it's largely young Black men, are 4 times as likely to be murdered or to be a victim of a homicide than a white person. And in my experience, covering courts, the perpetrators of those crimes are largely young Black men also. They're not, gangs of white men who are going out, in some race mob. It's a Black on Black issue. And that means that there's a lot of young Black men who need to be searched because they're carrying knives, and they're not all the zombie knife that is in the headlines all the time. A lot of the time they're just a small little kitchen knife, or that can be easily hidden. And I hear what Councillor Crawford says, but it's not a blunt sort of old-fashioned tool. It's the only way of finding out whether somebody's carrying a knife, and stopping them. And I think if Mariam was here, she would probably would have been delighted if a police officer had stopped the guy who killed her brother and found that knife on him that night or that day. So it's a real difficult balancing act. We don't want the discrimination and color blindness. People seeing like you said, a Black guy driving a nice car, let's stop him. He must be up to no good. But at the same point, I think there are reasons why young Black men are probably more likely to be searched, and and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Can I respond to that, Chair?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do agree with you. And I would say, if you have nothing to worry about what's wrong with being stopped and searched. But the problem is how it's done. And this is, okay, you have a black partner, you are white, you'd be treated differently. And so the thing is that I don't have a problem with black young men, especially being searched, because there is a problem there. And for me, I think, I don't know whether it's because of how I feel or how I was brought up in the family that I was brought up in, but maybe some of you can relate. We had parents that were strict with us. They gave us the disciplines that we needed. I think it's a whole community thing. So it's not, and again, why I'm saying this, it's not just about the police. It's about parenting as well. And I'm very big on that, because if some of our children are not being parented the way that they should be, then they will have no respect for authority. So you have that side of things. But then also when the police are stopping our young black men, do it with respect. Not a problem to be stopped, but do it with respect. But that's why I said what I said with regards to history. There's so much history of ill treatment that it's a difficult thing to deal with, even in this day and age, 2024.
Thank you for the response. Councillor Kwanzaa, I think that's going to be the last question. We're conscious of time now. Yeah,
It's I don't know if it's a statement or a question, but this Race Equality Commission that had its findings in 2020 found disproportionality in 6 priority areas, including crime. And I think it's important that the Citizens Tribunal, which was set up to make the council accountable, we just need to keep on pushing for accountability. There is some improvement, but I can assure you there's much more that needs to be done. So I just want to know how the presenters feel about this, Bishop Lloyd, and also Edmund Akaji. What are you aware of the commission, and how do you feel it's having any impact at all? Because we are aiming to make Ealing more accountable for its actions in crime and other areas, education and social services and so on. I'd like to hear your thoughts about that really quickly.
Bishop,
well, I think,
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is a bit of an impact, but for me, Councillor Kwanzaa, I think that these things will take time. These things will take time because it's not a quick fix thing, and we all have to do our part to try and make it work. And even if we can do a little bit in our own corners, we're making the effort. We find one reason why this can work, rather than think of all the reasons that it can't. And so if we can just have that one reason in our mind, we want a better community, we want a better healing, then we'll do whatever it takes to be able to make sure that this works in the way that it should.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could just hello, Chair, is it okay?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Kwanzaa. I totally agree with Bishop Lloyd, because these are structures that have been built not in the short, they've been built over a period. And it's not something, if we are looking at instant change, we will be preparing ourselves for failure. But I think constantly having conversations, pushing against the states, proffering solutions and working at them, patience as well. Because if we have a better policing, better community relations, we all are going to be the beneficiaries of it. And it's something that we all should buy into. Every effort that we can make to make our communities safer, to make our experiences of policing better, I think it's important for all of us to work towards it. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We shouldn't be looking to see results overnight. But the desire for change should not be any less pressing for us to see. And that's my view on it.
Thank you very much. And now we have, we want to hear from the police. It's in relation to turnaround plan, and also if can add a comment on something on Mariam, Paula's presentation, and across Bishop Crossfield's presentations as well, please. If you can incorporate all that in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for listening. It's been quite harrowing to hear some of the stories tonight. As a police officer of 26 and a half years, I've seen a lot of change, and we continue to see a lot of change. And I hope that the community believe the way that the leadership we have in the Ealing Police, that we are committed to that change and really want to make a difference. I would just like to offer apologies to Superintendent Sean Lynch. He can't make it here tonight, hence he sent us to understudy. Addressing the Bishop's concerns, we welcome his views, his positive views about a new partnership, and I might be so bold to say that with the council we're embarking on a new partnership with a lot more transparency and scrutiny, and I think some of the councillors have experienced that recently, and some of the options that we have offered to all to show what we do. And I hope it's been a positive experience, and people have enjoyed how we've opened our doors and allowed people to come in and experience what we experience every day. Just on that, I started this morning at 6:30 and I don't finish until gone 9 o'clock. So it is a long day for me too, and I've enjoyed the experience coming here and listening to what people have said. But we are truly committed to change, and the new Met for London commits that. And just for the purpose of the notes, is no longer called the turnaround plan. The turnaround plan started, but it's now been morphed into the new Met for London. So one of the things just to address from the Bishop, we embarked, I think it was last October, wasn't it, a consultation with the Stop and Search Charter. And I know that this is going to be written by the public, signed by the police, and governed independently. That is still being progressed. I know there are senior colleagues to Paul and I who are greatly looking into the feedback from the community. And I certainly believe from an Ealing perspective, we really drove home the opportunity for all the communities to have comment on that through the SMB, through the IAG, through the schools, through the faith premises. So there is a period of consolidation now through all the 32 boroughs of London where that's been assessed. And I know senior police colleagues are looking at trying to come to some sort of conclusion with that new charter. In terms of the new Met for London, we've had 2 meetings so far. I hope everyone managed to enjoy those. The first one was in Ealing, the second one was in Southall, and it will be no surprise, I can let you know. The next one will be in Acton, and we're still progressing the general organisation and logistics for that. We have really listened to the feedback from the community, and one of the most positive things I can find from the first new Met for London, 18% of the total feedback received across all 32 boroughs was from Ealing. So thank you for those who decided to give us their feedback. We do listen to feedback, and we do take it very seriously. There are lots of strands around the new Met for London, and we have lots of commitments, and it's a challenge for us, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's a 2-year plan, started last year, and it follows a lot of the principles what the Commissioner wants to do to change the Met, and his tagline of less crime, more trust, higher standard is driven into all my colleagues every day. And I remind people I chair a meeting twice a day, and I do emphasise the standards and the rebuilding the trust of the communities. If it be all right, could I ask you to comment on some of the stronger points? Is that all right? So the new Met for London has lots of principles. We have readdressed our values. So the values have now changed into a key principle as well. But some of the underlying principles in new Met for London is community crime fighting, fixing the foundation, and third one is running off the tip of my tongue, changing the culture. So we emphasize that in team meetings, and through partnerships all the time. It's important to note that much as people want immediate change, we want immediate change, we're on a long program to get this change through. So if it's all right, I'll just hand over to Paul, who's following in the lead to learn some of the changes we've got under the Strongest Ever Neighbourhood Programme. Is that all right, Paul?
Thank you. And Chair and everyone else, apologies for stepping out of the room. I went to spend some time with Mariam around some of the points that was raised. I think it was very pivotal. I had that conversation. So apologies, I went outside this room, but there was conversations we had around it. And it's really inspiring. Listen to everyone's comments here. It's not a criticism, it's a way we can make change together. This is the whole thing about community first policing. Part of the role that I have been working with, and I thank Jess and the team, is around how do you make a change? How do we tie in together with yourselves as a scrutiny panel? You've been out for 2 visits with us now. This is what James was discussing. How do I open my doors up and show you the challenges we have internally and admit the challenge I've got, but then how do I deliver for the community of Ealing? That is the key bit around what we're doing. We have had issues in the past. We have not spoken to people. We've not listened. That is change. We are changing. We are listening. We're trying to adapt to the changes in society and the political landscape. So the bit we're doing internally, that you may have seen, and apologies if you've covered this before, it's around the Strongest Ever Neighbourhoods. Is this part is a key function of the community. How do we get back the trust of the community? This is where you'll see the visibility of the officers. They'll be out in the streets talking to you, having war panel meetings, having conversations. How do I find out and unlock the wealth of information to come through? We have been reliant too long on people being able to use a call centre or a virtual way to report crime. No, let's go back to the human conversation as well. We can do various platforms, but also stop, talk to someone, explain what the journey is and go forward. So this is the piece of the change we're doing at the moment. And that started with how we report crime, how we behave. It goes back into the evidence-based policing, is around looking at what we do well, what we don't look well. And some of the points you've all raised is we don't just look inside policing inside London, it is nationally and it is internationally and through key partners. How do you make that change and make it work the right way? So we're looking at the moment within the neighbours is, as you've seen, we've going back to the dedicated ward officers. We're giving you the ward officers back there. You will see them there. We're given the tools of the IT equipment so they can do all the work in front of you, not having to go back to a station, which means you see more presence on the streets. We are working with the council and key partners around how do we share that information, the pieces which were discussed with all of us here, especially around the hate crime and how sometimes things slip through the hands. We don't want that to happen. And this is part of the process that we're going forward to, is making sure the right organisation, the right body gives the best service to that victim or to that member, resident or community member. So that is where we're going through. So we have done that. We are looking at how do we look at the needs of each ward independently. How do we know what they want? And that is talking through, giving the feedback from them. And we are now looking at that engagement stage. Again, it's opening our conversation. We don't know what's best. Okay, we try our hardest, but sometimes we do not communicate. It's listening to what you have. The scrutiny panel I went out with you, the first one was really impactful and it was really interesting. We had some very good conversations. It was 2 ways. There's a couple of conversations where people were talking about rough sleepers and you spent 15, 20 minutes talking to them. And then around the corner, what are you doing around it? But we've just been there. It's again, how do we articulate and show we are trying to deal with something? So we're doing that. And then again, the bit we're doing as we're in the police is making sure we have the correct estate for our staff. We're giving them the equipment to do it. We're mindful of austerity, but where do I put my officers to make the best difference? So we have literally unpicked years and years of policing and listened to the feedback of the New Met for London, listen to the feedback of the community and actually rebuild it together. And I think the pioneering work we've done with the meeting with Jess and the team around the collaboration bit is going to make a massive difference. It is the start. As Bishop quite rightly put around the monitoring group stop search, the impact that can have. We need to get that feedback and we need to re-involve it into our education and training. Again, for so long we have been reactive. We now need to listen to the community, how we want to engage. But I'm mindful we are constantly going out recently to the community, a New Met for London, the Stop and Search Charter. We are trying to listen to you, but we're also understanding the problems we're facing. And that's where we want those real hard conversations, hold us to account, and actually provide our side of the story as well. As I said to Miriam outside, some of the systems comes to the police, not to defend it. Some of the decisions made is done by judicial systems, the court cases. I will admit we are dealing with it, but sometimes having that education piece, and the bit I want to touch on, and your point was very good, was around the court systems, was very impactful. The social media and drill videos, how do I control something which doesn't actually sit within inside our jurisdiction? So there's all these bits we're taking forward for, but we are listening and we're trying to adapt, and we are constantly doing it. We are taking our sergeants and inspectors through retraining to understand the impact of our officers around the impact of a stop and search. If it needs to be, make sure we explain why we are doing that process and actually talk to as a human being. So we are going through, and the only way we do that is by listening to what people's interactions are and how we can change as an organisation.
Thank you very much. Yep, Mr. Murray, I was going to come to you anyway.
Oh, that's very convenient, isn't it? So I suppose I'm only going to add a little bit of a short piece, but I just wanted to recognise the fact that it's quite unique for the police to put themselves in front of a scrutiny committee. It's not happening in any other parts of London. It was a conversation I think that the chief executive had with Sean Wilson to make that ask, and I think fair play to the police in the context of them wanting to be open to change and to have those conversations, to put themselves through what is a council process and open the doors to you guys and let you kind of have a look under the hood, so to speak, is kind of indicative of that open approach. From my perspective, certainly since the new Met for London's landed and Sean Lynch has joined the police and brought colleagues like James and Paul and others, we're starting to see a real change in the neighbourhood space. We're starting to see more resources go back into neighbourhoods. We're starting to see a reinvestment in the partnership, which, to be fair, got into quite a strained space just based on resources and people moving and things like that. So it feels like a corner has been turned. But I think we also have to recognise, and as somebody who works with the police every day, they are a hierarchical, top-down, huge organisation. Lots of stuff comes from the middle. There is that kind of system and process that you need in an organisation like that. But the flip side of that is it's often difficult for them to pivot and communicate. And you know, we collectively, the council, yourselves as members, but also the community, need to absolutely help them as much as possible to get the conversations they need. And it's certainly my feeling that, and I think the comments made by the guys tonight demonstrate that they want to have the conversations, but we have to meet them halfway in some contexts. And often it's very difficult to get the community to come and give feedback, whether it's through all the reasons that have been spoken about tonight by Bishop, by Mariam, by others, councillors as well, or whether it's kind of just not wanting to go into that space, or people not feeling confident to have those kinds of conversations with the police. So however we can try and get our communities in front of them to give them that honest feedback and to hold them to account in the way that's been done tonight by Mariam's really powerful kind of feedback, I think is something that we need to keep doing. And like the guys have said, and like Bishop has said, it takes a long time to put right some of the things that have happened, but we have to persevere and keep trying to move in the right direction. So we really welcome your insights. You've had a unique opportunity to see lots of aspects of this, and I hope you found all the different opportunities and things you've had a chance to see insightful. And we welcome your recommendations to take forward collectively, to join up and try and support the police to take it forward, because what's set out in the new Met for London is something I think most people would get behind. And I think it's quite unique in terms of the policing by consent context as well, and the drive to get back to some of the principles of the police. So yeah, that was all I really wanted to add. There's only one other point I'd like to make, and it was in relation to drill videos. Now, this is a bit of a subtext, but we tried to tackle drill videos in Norfolk. We took injunctions against particular producers on making drill videos on housing estates, because it was indicative of the housing estate led to the locational perspective. And so we took some injunctions in that space. And that was the first time I think there's been action around trying to restrict drill videos. And it was to some extent successful, but it's extremely resource intensive, and it's specific to individuals. And it was because they would put, you know, our estate sign, so our council estate sign, in the video. And on that basis, we were able to try and say, you're using council land and council asset to promote this. So we have tried, but it is a very difficult space. And you get into obviously the creative arts, and restricting that is very difficult. But I think her commentary around that is really key, in that it does drive a lot of the ongoing violence and the kind of reciprocal nature of that violence as well, which is a very difficult thing to unpick.
Yeah, Mr. Harry.
Can I just say
Chief
thank
Inspector.
you, Jess? That was really heartfelt and really warm to hear. I think Paul and I, we spend most of our days hearing why we haven't done anything well, or why we can't do it better. So thank you. It's actually quite nice to go home tonight and speak to my family to say that someone said I've done a good job today. So thank you. Perhaps not everyone agrees, but that's what I'm going to say. We are doing a lot. We are going back to basics. We are using community crime fighting. We are using lots of other tools and specialist crime, but the focus, what the Commissioner wants, is in the community. And Paul and I are very passionate about that. I've come from a background that isn't linked to frontline policing, and it was quite a shock to me, but I really enjoy, generally most days, being with the community and being with the officers. We have listened to community. We have taken an uplift now. So in terms of driving standards, I now have 4 inspectors working to me. I think everyone knows Lee Ballard. He is a hero of Ealing. One of the first things he said to me is, boss, there used to be 4 of me. I can't quite give you 4 of you, Lee, because that would be just impossible. Let's work. Do you mind just getting that? Is that all right? Cheers, thank you. So what I have done, we have now recruited 3 other inspectors. There will be other sergeants to fall in front of those inspectors. So that's the bit about high standards. And 2 of the new sergeants joined last week, which is really good to help with awards. The field work's really important to us. We open our doors to all of you, and we welcome your feedback directly tonight or an email later. It's entirely up to you. And for us, we're the lead borough. So of the BCU, Superintendent Lynch has got the autonomy and the authority to lead the new Met for London for us, but also the strongest NNO programme for all 3 boroughs. And it's making a difference. We do recognise there are blockers and barriers, certainly in terms of recruitment. It's never a pretty picture, particularly what's gone on the news recently. And also retention. We're doing all we can. Unfortunately, I've got to do an exit interview next week, whether one of the PCs is leaving. But in terms of recruitment, we have a strong outreach programme. We have regularly become the 2nd strongest BCU for the outreach programme and recruiting people from underrepresented groups. And that's something we're proud of as well. So the future, what's the future look like? I've mentioned the new Met for London. That's coming into action. So that'll be a date. Are you okay? Yeah, you're right. Okay. That will be coming up soon. In the future, we want to hold, if we can, before, is it the next panel on the 30th? Is that when it all finishes? But the superintendent and I will hopefully organise another visit, perhaps doing some other work in terms of exercising and the Hydra scenarios, but we'll try and organise that in due course. But I'd be really interested tonight to hear, whether online or not, what the feedback is like to our field work, because again, without the feedback, we can't react to it. And also we can share that with the other 2 boroughs in the BCU. So thank you for listening. It does take time. We are committed and we want to make this work.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions now. It's just let's go for any recommendations the panel wish to make. Yeah. Sure.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. And I'll keep it quick. I know we're on recommendations. I just want to say, I think the approach in Ealing is, to me, it's best practice. And we've been really struck when I think that kind of lifting the bonnet and seeing behind the scenes has been so helpful. And I know what Jess said, it's not happening in other parts of the borough, other parts in other boroughs. And I just think it's something that is very eye-opening. It's given us great confidence, and then we can cascade it back to the communities. So I suppose there was a couple of points and recommendations. I think there's something about our best practice. I think there's a model here on how to do it. Setting up this panel has been brilliant. I think that's it's something that should be looked at. It's something that people are always worried about, you know, safety and security. And I think we should kind of look at this panel and keeping it on. On the kind of the back to basics point, I think that it goes to the kind of the heart of trust. And I think the measures like coffee with a copper and how to report crime, all those kind of back to basics things, it really do increase confidence. So I just think we've trialed it, it's worked. And I think working closely with our local police panels, you know, I think I've personally seen an improvement since I've been coming to this panel, and also you know, feeding some of the information back to the local police panel that we have as well. I think that sort of the back to basics approach is working, and I think we should do more of it. One other point was just on evidence. So this point keeps coming up for me. It's everything, as we know, resources are restricted, and we know that things are data led. So I am so struck by residents who say, "Oh my goodness, but we've seen this happen so many times here," and how we can work together with the community so we can equip them to provide really good evidence. And I just think we need to break that down a bit. What is good evidence is a point that just keeps. There's a messaging point down, exactly. And I think there is just an issue there, because I notice people get frustrated because they say, "Oh my goodness, what more evidence do you need?" And they want to show you things. So I think how we can kind of join the dots and work more closely together would be one of the takeaway points. But Chair, I just want to say, I really think we have best practice in what we've seen. Thank you.
Just Councillor Ty's rather stolen my thunder with that last point. I'd entirely endorse. It was a conversation we had at a previous panel about what makes good evidence, and Superintendent Lynch was kind enough to talk at length about that. But actually getting that communicated across the borough to everybody who needs it, even in a fact sheet or in some form of communication, would be really useful, because unfortunately we don't know who the victims of crime are going to be. And we don't know when that crime is going to affect people. The only other point I would make is in regard to communication and representation. I've seen a huge improvement over the last year in terms of my neighbourhood teams, who, you know, even in the last couple of weeks have delivered great results on historical crime in my community, and I know I've communicated that to them. I'm really pleased to hear that so many residents of Ealing have contributed so far, because when we started on this process, they weren't necessarily up for that. They didn't feel like their feedback was going to be heard, and it feels like it has been. My only recommendation around that is to continue doing this, continue this method of going back to the community, holding those public meetings, presenting yourselves almost, you know, if it's possible on an annual basis in different places, talking to people, because it will build up the trust and confidence. And I would say those ward officers, those dedicated ward officers, have made a real difference, because people are now beginning to see the same police officer around, not all the time, obviously, but a lot more so than they used to. And that gives them the confidence to know that that trusted individual is on the front line and is able to pick up information. And I would just say something I said previously at the outset of this panel. We have a really good model historically within Ealing. Mr. Murray is aware of it, around our policing model and some of the innovative steps that we've taken. Yes, there have been resource pressures and COVID pressures and all sorts of things that have come into that. But I think that can survive even the most challenging of times of reputational times for the Metropolitan Police, if we allow a route into that for our contributors who are online, for our diverse community. So as long as those commitments are there, and I agree with Councillor Ty to try and keep this panel and this line of communication open, but it actually goes beyond councillors and into our communities. It's so important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It's
thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Councillor Ty and Councillor Crawford have taken mostly everything what I was going to say. So my one will be very brief now. I'll just reiterate a few things, but briefly. Basically, what I want to reiterate is that the comms is really important. The communications, but with the residents is very important. And if we can actually build on that, because that's where the confidence will come. So if we are doing what we're intending to do, more street presence, giving confidence, or CCTVs where they've witnessed it. We've all witnessed how effective our CCTV is around the borough. What I would say is there are other things that you could also give them confidence with, is your response times. Publish some information that they can actually see that you guys are really changing. There was one important thing that I found, which came across to me as new, but you guys have got that in order, the ride-along scheme, where residents can actually witness, like we have seen how effective your operation was, that the ride-along scheme, if you promote that, because I think you will really build the confidence. So that's what I've got to say, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kwanzaa.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. A few months ago, the police commissioner came to Ealing and he reinforced an iconic statement by Robert Peel. Basically, the people are the public are the police and the police are the public. And I think for me, it's reinforcing this point I mentioned at an earlier scrutiny panel last year, that we need representation. It's great that we're all working together and the police are being scrutinised, but I want to see more people within the police who look like me at these scrutiny panels. Because for those individuals who've had very difficult experiencing of policing, it's very encouraging too to see somebody who looks like them at these panels representing the police. To me, that's very important, representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Summers.
Yeah, just as far as a recommendation is concerned, I've got a sort of woolly, half thought out one, but it's basically on what Mariam was saying earlier about the impact it had on her as a sibling of a homicide victim. I don't know whether we could somehow get a sort of process together where the police and the council and especially the education authorities could work when you have a homicide and you have parents and siblings who are badly affected by it, that there is some sort of mechanism that sort of recognizes that and they're not sort of evicted or they're not sort of, there is some sort of mechanism which would protect them from worse, even worse, going through sort of when they're already going through what they're going through.
You're talking about victim support. Really,
yeah, but some sort of process. I mean, obviously, when there is a homicide, I know the police have like family liaison officers, but I don't know how soon they sort of, if the crime hasn't been solved and it's not going to court, how do they often, could they hand over to the council and say, these are the people in question, can you just make sure that they have housing and education and whatever.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hurst.
Right. I desperately thought to write down, a few hot topics and core focus areas. And it is a bit overwhelming. This topic is super complex, very important. And there are probably not very easy solutions to all the questions we've heard and debated. So I definitely agree with Councillor Crawford. We have to keep this going because this needs definitely more work. And for us, with this panel to work at what are the recommendations we can give, which are realistic for us to achieve and really tackle, is probably really important. Safety is very important for our residents, for sure. And I think Mr. Murray made the comment about Ealing becomes a bit of a hotspot along our traffic lines. And I see that in my own ward in Ealing Common, even the little Ealing Common tube station becomes a bit of a hotspot and everybody knows about Broadway anyway. So there are so many kind of issues here for us to look at to come to really kind of quite hard, fast recommendations, I think, should be our focus. And definitely agree we should keep this going because it's super important for our residents feeling safe, especially with them experience somehow increasing crime, even in my own neighborhood, anything from harmless things to not so harmless things. So I think for us to keep the work going, definitely for that. Even if I haven't got hard and fast recommendation now, because they're hard to come by. Working with communities for sure, and I'm definitely missing ward panels a bit more in Ealing Common. Haven't yet managed in almost 2 years to attend one. So yeah, sorry, I'll stop here because
Thank you.
more work to come.
Yeah, Councillor Comer, yes, yeah, we are going well over the time now, Councillor.
I know we've said this before, but I think there's a lot more work to be done. And then this conversation needs to be continued. It is complex, but a lot of good work has been done as well. The one thing that I would say as a recommendation is that community engagement and confidence, okay, that still is a bit not quite there. And although our SNT are meeting the public, they're doing the coffee with the copper, very few people turn up. And I'm talking about Ealing Broadway, okay, where I have been to some of them. And sometimes there are none. However, when they do a street stall like they did in the shopping center, a lot of people did stop. I mean, dozens of people, and especially mothers after school. And you're looking at a different category of people as well with children. So it was the children who were coming forward. And there were things, there leaflets, or there was, I think, a sweet or something as well to hand out. So I think for me, I mean, in my view, is that needs to be worked out because the confidence is still lacking, because people feel if they are going to approach a policeman or a police person there, they're not going to get what they're looking for. Then nobody's going to listen. Okay, that's still there. So I think that if that's broken down to a degree, the rest will really, I mean, I really do take a lot of interest in communities, and especially the safer communities. And I listen to everybody, and I do feel very strongly about it. So they are out there, they're doing the work, they're spending the hour trying to meet people, and no one turns up. It's a waste of time. So that needs to be looked at. It's just like the hate crime thing. They had a stall, people came, but although they took the leaflets, there was still that thing, so I think you just need to just break that barrier, that mindset that the police can be approached. I mean, when I went out to Mariam, when I asked her the question, I just felt she's slightly hesitant. And I told her, look, the reason we're there and the reason you were there is to actually speak about what you feel, because that will help. Unless you tell, no one can do. It's just like reporting. If you don't report it, you don't know it. So I feel that is pretty important. A very simple thing, but that could actually work and go a long way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the contributions. Now we are looking at panel program. We've only got one meeting left. That's on the 30th of April. Yep, and I think that's we're going to from SNT, I believe. Mr. Murray, you want to?
So the final scrutiny panel is the annual scrutiny, I think, of the report of the work of the Safer Ealing Partnership, which is a report we do every year. It can run to 100 pages, although I'm trying to make people, brevity is key, right? And similarly, it also summarizes lots of different parts of the partnership, because the Safer Ealing Partnership, whilst this has been a police focus, and my service generally does a lot of work in the context of policing and the ASB and things like that. You have the fire brigade, you have probation, you have all the other parts of that partnership who contribute to all the other parts of safety, which goes well beyond just the policing part, although they are integral to that. So that's the report that comes there. There's a lot of information in there. And also, it kind of recaps what we've delivered this year, but also what's changed and what the challenges are. So it will give you a very different perspective in terms of what the collective partnership has delivered, as opposed to what you've been focused on, which is much more policing orientated.
we can do action recommendations in that meeting as well.
Yeah, sure, okay, yeah. Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry for everything, we are running late. We've gone over the